Guys, thank you so very much for joining us today. The IT company has been providing a series of videos with industry and business leaders across a wide variety of industries. And today we're going to talk about what can we do as business and sales professionals to continue to be successful in today's climate. Before we started the video, the four of us were talking about kind of what we see as being the longevity of this and the fact that we could be in this current state for a little bit. So just to give a quick introduction of who we've got with us today, good friend Brandon Bruce. Brandon and I did a video recording a couple weeks ago, so I'm sure that you all remember his face. We've also got Andrew King. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Good. And then one of my lifelong friends and somebody that's like a big brother to me, Joe Storch. Joe, how are you doing today, man?
Doing great, buddy. Always great to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, very quickly, why don't you all kind of, in addition to your name, just tell the people out there what you do professionally so that everybody has a good idea of your background. And Brandon, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Well, Kenneth, it's great to be with you. Kenneth and I did a podcast together a couple of years ago called The Love-Hate Relationship with Sales, which we really enjoyed doing. I ran a software company based here in Knoxville called Cirrus Insight that connected Salesforce with Gmail. I'm now involved in lots of projects. Most recently, created the Startup Knox Ecosystem Guide, which provides a listing of resources that support entrepreneurs and founders throughout Knoxville. So we're really excited about that.
Okay. Andrew?
Yeah, Kenneth, thanks again for having all of us on. I work at Northwestern Mutual, run a financial planning practice here, working with individuals, families, and businesses. And just excited to kind of share what we're doing at Northwestern and listen and learn from you guys as well.
Awesome. Last but not least, Joe.
Yeah, my name is Joe Storch, and I'm a partner and director of business development for Patriot Talent Solutions. We do IT services, primarily staffing related services, along with some technical training.
Awesome. So we've tried to kind of get people from a wide variety of industries and provide some insight. So hopefully for those sales professionals that are listening today, we can give you all some good success stories, tips, and just an idea or some ideas rather as to what you all can do to remain successful in an unbelievably difficult climate to sell. Very quickly, I was thinking of how I met everyone before I got on, and I've known Joe, who's been like a big brother to me for almost 26 years. So we go way back to the days when I was just a little snotty-nosed punk at the local community center thinking that I was the best basketball player in the gym. And then Brandon, we met at a networking event about 3.5 years ago. And I have a goal of mine to always talk to the tallest person in the room. And so that was your day. So
success.
He was checking for eligibility.
Had the opportunity and pleasure to work for you at Cirrus Insight, and we did the podcast together, which was a lot of fun. And Andrew, I guess it's probably been about 5 years, maybe 6 even, since you and I met. We've maintained a great relationship, and Andrew's actually my financial advisor, so I've got some skin in the game. He's by no means getting rich off of me, but I'm at least invested in you, and we've maintained a good relationship throughout the years. So with that being said, want to get started with you first of all, Brandon, and kind of from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenge right now that sales professionals are facing during this time frame? And then we'll just kind of go around and I'll let all three of you kind of answer that same question. We'll move from there.
I mean, I think the biggest challenge that a lot of salespeople are facing now are whether they have a job, right? I mean, just full stop at a foundation level. There are a lot of sectors that have been so negatively impacted by the business slowdown or shutdown that a lot of salespeople simply aren't working at the companies they worked at before. So we're talking about tourism, hospitality, travel, people-centric businesses where people gather together, theaters, movies, entertainment venues, right? Bars, restaurants. I think these are some of the hardest hit areas where a lot of those salespeople don't have their jobs now. They've been laid off or they're on furlough. Or I think in some of the best case scenarios and some of the best stories that we've heard, there have been some really creative pivots that have allowed people to get really creative and continue to sell, but maybe sell in a different way. Maybe they're not selling exactly the same thing they were selling before. But that's not to downplay the pain that are in those industries right now. For many salespeople, there's simply not the work they had before. And so, for them, hopefully this is an opportunity to look for other things to sell, other ways in which to sell, looking for next opportunities. And obviously, we're all hoping that we rebound from this as quickly as possible. But like you said at the top, we don't know how long that's going to take. So it's gonna require creativity. I'll throw two quick examples at you that I've seen locally that I've been really impressed by. One is the rate at which so many of the restaurants here in Knoxville have pivoted to allow for pickup and delivery. Many of them didn't do that before. For those that did, they're ramping up. For those that didn't, they've quickly been able to add that capacity. And some are doing really creative things. I saw a parking lot set up last night that had little card tables with little bottles of wine pictured on it. And so at a certain hour of the evening, you could pull up your car and they would bring out food and also do wine tastings in the parking lot. And I thought this was super creative, and they're all spaced out, right? So they're all like 5-6 spaces apart for the various cars. And I thought, well, that's a really neat idea, because people still want to have that experience. They still want to get out of the house, have a date night perhaps, and here's a way to do it. I think a lot of restaurants have gotten creative doing bundles, right? So it's kind of hard. You got a family of 4, 5, 6 people running around the house trying to get orders for everybody. You just want to get the family pack. And so I've seen a lot of restaurants that didn't have that before have added that. And another quick example that I've been following is like a number of furniture stores. So we're talking about retail, and here you can't have people going through the store because they're all closed by order. A number of them have been doing online auctions, like on Instagram. Here's a photo of the piece of software. You got an hour to bid on it. At the end, great, it's yours. We'll settle up with you offline. We'll give you a call and get your credit card. I was like, what a great way to turn over inventory, allow the staff to continue to sell, versus just say, hey, the warehouse is closed. We don't know when we'll be back. We'll see in a couple months. So it's a nice way to generate some cash flow, even though the physical facility is closed.
Awesome. Andrew?
Yeah, I think to echo what Brandon said, so much of what we see people dealing with is just the fear and uncertainty, whether they've lost jobs. Obviously, there's a great deal of fear of, are they going to get that job back, or they have to pivot and find something new, or just the uncertainty of how do we continue. I can't imagine trying to get started in a sales-based career right now, because those individuals that haven't built, long-term relationships and cultivated those relationships, most people, especially small business owners, just don't have time to take out of their day to try to do that right now. Mm-hmm. And that's been what I've seen, in my business, of just trying to really touch base and connect with people and just say, hey, we're here if you need us. And there's so much more relational value. And I think that's really being put to the test, especially for people that didn't spend the time cultivating those relationships and just focus more on transactional selling. I don't know that there's a time for that right now.
Yeah. Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. These guys hit the nail on the head. I mean, the whole thing is, how do we adapt? And that's how do we adapt as a sales, from a sales standpoint? How do we adapt as a business? How do we adapt in society? Like, what's happened, where we were in society and in business, that's over and done with. We're not going completely back to how that was. And we just need to be great with it. You just got to buy in and move forward.
So now that we know that we need to adapt, and we know that we might need to look at selling in another industry or going and working for another employer, hopefully we have an opportunity to use the relationships that we built and continue to utilize those in order to hopefully be successful. Let us hear exactly what you all have done specifically in your respective businesses to be successful right now. What changes have you made? What did things look like a year ago versus what are you doing right now and saying, hey, we're probably going to have to continue to do this for the foreseeable future? in order for us to stay in business? And Joe, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think number one, it's platforms like this. Like we used to huddle together every morning in our scrum in person, and now we have to do it virtually. And you know what? That's fine. Like we've all bought into it. We've gotten used to using a lot of these platforms. You can do your business meetings, off Zoom as well, and then also even like the networking groups. I think once you realize that there are alternatives out there, it's buying into it and everybody getting adept to utilizing the technology. Being in tune, checking in with your customers and understanding where they're at with things, how their businesses are going to adapt, what they think that they need. Businesses now are starting to look at, okay, what are we going to look like moving forward? How are we going to pivot? In big business, both big business and small business. So helping guide them also to wherever they're trying to get to, and helping support that is vitally important. You got to stay close to them and understanding how your services may have to pivot also and adapt. So.
Okay. All right, Andrew.
Yeah, I think Joe hit it pretty squarely on the head there. I mean, a lot of the conversations that I've been having with our existing clients and then prospective clients is, for my past 9 years at Northwestern, life's been pretty easy because we've been on a steady bull run in the market. Life's pretty good. People are spending money. And now, we're really being put to the test to really dig in, and get in the corner with our clients and just, really understand where they're at and understand that there may not be a lot of significant changes in terms of saving more money right now or looking at investment strategies because people are just really trying to hold on to what they've got because, what I'm seeing is right now is very challenging. And as Joe kind of alluded, we really don't know what the next 3 to 6 months look like. And that's causing people to really tighten up. And so, what I'm just trying to really do the best job I can at is just listen and understand that, there's not a boxed solution for anything right now. And really there should have never been. But now more than ever, just connect with our client, just say, hey, we're here for whatever you need as often as you need it.
Okay. Brandon?
I think one thing is interesting. I mean, going back to a time where I worked in sales and higher education, which is fundraising, but then also direct sales for software as a service. Whenever we had sales meetings, we would always talk about the prospects and dive in and try to figure out how can we make common cause with these folks, right? Who went to school with this person? Who shares that same extracurricular activity? Oh, they're also a swimmer. Oh, they spent 2 years in DC and I used to live in DC 10 years ago. We can talk about that, right? You're always searching for those things. And so one big plus one for this environment is it's really easy to find common cause with everybody because we're literally all in the same boat. Everyone pretty much is working from home. Everyone is trying to figure out how to do homeschooling right now, right? And keep their kids active and engaged and explain things to their family. Everyone's trying to figure out when it's safe to go to the grocery store. Like all of these things are common stories across all of us. And so you really don't need to search very far in order to make a real human connection with someone, right? I mean, even doing these calls is a lot of fun because everyone gets like that quick view into people's kitchen or living room or home office. And there's kids playing in the background. There's a dog, there's a cat. And it's like, there's a million things to talk about, which is a great way for, I think, salespeople to make those connections. I think then taking that to an even higher level during times of crisis or times of tragedy, all of us are looking for who are the folks that are going to be there with us, be there for us, who can we look up to, who can we trust. And so during these times, and it was obviously different, but there's some similarities with the 2008 financial crisis, with 9/11, with other periods of history that we've lived through, is that these are opportunities for brands, for individuals. So we're talking about salespeople and sales teams themselves to differentiate themselves and really burnish their brand value, right? What do we stand for? And I've heard this so many times over the last couple of weeks, where if a business or a salesperson as an individual has gone off the reservation, they're not doing what everyone thinks they should be doing, people are remembering that. I mean, I've literally heard people say like, yeah, that business didn't follow the mayor's order, so I don't think I'm going to shop there again. Not meaning again during this downturning, meaning again like ever, because it's a serious time. And so people are making these big judgments and big decisions because they're looking for leadership. On the flip side, I've heard people say, the opposite, which is to say, oh man, that restaurant is awesome, right? Like the delivery was so efficient and they implemented touchless, which by the way, I think is going to be one of those changes that happens coming out of this. Like anybody that wasn't doing touchless before, it's time to go touchless for lots of stuff, including payments. But hey, that was really efficient. And also what they're doing is they're packaging up these bundles and working with, United Way or the school system, and they're connecting food with kids. That resonates with me. That means a lot to me. I'm going to keep going to that restaurant forever. Like they're my new favorite place, right? And so I've heard both from people throughout the community. The folks that are stepping up doing the right stuff, their reputations are just solid gold right now. And the folks that are not doing the right stuff, I don't think those brands are built to last.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. The separation that we'll continue to see over the coming months and maybe even the next year or two in terms of how different organizations and brands are able to differentiate themselves. We're all a little bit different in terms of our businesses, obviously, but there are many ways to go about prospecting. There's cold calling, there's warm lead generation. You can purchase leads. You can ask for introductions through common connections. All of these things are a bunch of different ways in order to prospect. But right now, there are a lot of salespeople that are really in a place of disarray in terms of how do I prospect? Because for me right now, to call up a small business owner and to talk to them about their IT services could be so off-putting that they may never want to speak with me or hear about the IT company again because they just had to let go of half of their staff. And so me talking to them about cybersecurity, right, is probably not at the very top of their list. They're literally trying to figure out, how am I going to stay in business? And so there's a very delicate balance of how to go about prospecting. So for people that are watching this right now, I'd love to hear, and I think they would as well, to hear what do you all see as being ways that sales professionals can still go about prospecting without being off-putting, with also having a significant amount of empathy and understanding, but also with trying to drive business and trying to add value and create opportunities that their prospects and customers might be able to take advantage of. So would love to hear what you all would think what you all think would be good prospecting opportunities. And Andrew, I'll start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean, everything has been client-centric, for us. We've been trying to really spend time with those existing clients. And one thing that we've pretty consistently found is in these trying times is we're just trying to relieve pressure points. And in that, just asking, simple questions. There are other people that are feeling a lot of what you're feeling right now. And if so, and in most cases there are, would you be open to facilitating that introduction? That's what we would do in normal times. Now we really have not been doing nearly as much prospecting, just kind of been more servant first. And what's been very interesting in that is now, because we really do see some challenging times ahead, people are talking a lot about my specific industry and saying, we've always kind of talked about working with a financial advisor, financial planner. Is now a good time or not to be having those conversations? And in those existing client relationships, we're finding that people are saying, hey, you really should, give this team a call. And there's a lot of people that do what I do and do it really well. And I think there's just a real opportunity to kind of hit the reset button, go to that 30,000 foot view and just say, where we're at today is maybe not where we at least intended or planned on being, but what do we do with what we've been given?
Yeah. Brandon?
Well, for one, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to stop prospecting. To me, that doesn't make sense. What does make sense is to stop the playbook that was in place before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have templates rolling, like this is my winning template for LinkedIn, this is my winning drip sequence by email, this is how I do my phone calls, I think that does need to all be paused and then readapted for the current environment. So the messages that I've seen that are, I'm just going to plow ahead and do the same thing I was doing before, unfortunately, it can come off as being tone deaf, right? To Andrew's point. Don't you realize this is happening all around us and this is all thinking about hours a day? Like, are you not, what's going on here? Or do you not feel this pain? Are you not considering how this has affected my life? It's off wrong. That said, going to the opposite end of the pendulum swing, over focusing on that and failing to communicate what it is you're offering to do, I think is also a problem, right? You see these messages coming through like, man, it's such a hard time, these times of uncertainty, I'd really like to have a chat. And it's like, about what? If we want to focus on that, I can look it up on the internet or watch the news. And so the best messaging that I've seen comes across as acknowledging what's happening out in the world and then saying, here's why what we do is important right now and why we believe in it and why it connects to our core values. So even companies that, I would say the easiest in many respects is to say, hey, we're in the healthcare business. Like everyone goes, yeah, it looks really important right now. Keep doing what you're doing, ramp it up. Let's go. We support that 100%. For other businesses, though, that are tangential or pretty far removed from something like that, being able to say, look, we see what's going on. Here's what we're doing, because by doing this, we're providing jobs for people. And we are so committed to that because they're supporting their families with the paychecks that we're delivering to them. That's a winning message. And I've seen that come across my inbox several times. Or here's what we're doing to serve our clients. And it's been deemed an essential service. And here's why we agree it's essential. Like if this stops, the greater machine stops, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're all in this together. If we just decide to unilaterally stop what we're doing, look at all the downstream folks that are going to suffer and look at all the upstream suppliers that are going to suffer. Like we're part of a bigger picture here. I think explaining that out to people as you prospect and as you sell is really important because it helps to educate folks on the role that we each play and the role of business in this whole economy that we support. And so those to me have been the most successful messages, adapting those to say, hey, we know we're in this business and that doesn't seem like it's top of mind today, but here's why it's really important. And here's why we're still committed to it. And here's why we think that we can still help you through this environment. Those are the best ones I've seen.
Awesome. Joe?
Couldn't agree with the guys anymore. Like the reality of it is that everybody is changing. We're all in it together, but there's opportunity in the change. And where a lot of the initial, because everybody had to pivot at the same time, it was really hard to kind of grasp what we may have to think about moving forward and risk mitigation and that kind of stuff. We've now gotten far enough into it that we know things are changing, the businesses are adapting. So now business leaders and decision makers are starting to think about, hey, what is our new norm going to be moving forward and what risks do we have? And as sales professionals, we got to be willing to have those conversations now. Like hey, I don't want to necessarily make a decision. Like people are discussing that internally every day. And where there might have been some initial pushback on sales professionals for, trying to do the transactional sales. If you're doing the consultative sales and understanding what these businesses need from a value standpoint, there's a great opportunity, and we've got to be bought in on that.
So what you all just talked about is great, and one thing that you all didn't necessarily use the word, but certainly you talked about the philosophy, and that's pipelining. And pipeline is a huge word for every sales professional. If your pipeline is not full, it's going to be extremely difficult to be successful. And all three of you have metrics in your industry that say, if my pipeline looks like this on a consistent basis, my end result will look like this, and that end result will generate this amount of revenue for my company or organization, and that will end up being a certain amount of money that I can take home to my family. Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of dig a little bit more into how do sales professionals maintain a full pipeline at this time? How do we stay top of mind? For myself, there were a handful of organizations that we were at about the 50-yard line and in the middle of March, and then everything went south. Nobody wanted to spend any money. Companies were focused on trying to stay in business as opposed to making investments. So for myself and other people that are out there listening, how do we maintain communication and relationships with those individuals? How do we continue to fill a pipeline? And how do we continue to stay top of mind, keeping in mind that people probably aren't going to buy right now, but hopefully in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, they will be ready to do that. And we want to be the ones that are right there. So what are some of the tips that you have to people out there to continue to fill the pipeline and continue to stay top of mind? Joe, we'll start with you.
Well, at least for our industry, I mean, there has been some changes, and obviously with a lot of people being either laid off or furloughed or whatever it may be, that's changing maybe what certain aspects of the pipeline might look like. But it boils down to just having the daily activity and consistently trying to refill that pipeline. Your pipeline to a certain extent might have got tabled, but it may just be adjusting, and you may need to be watering those seeds or providing it a little bit more sun or whatever it may be in order to get that pipeline kind of reestablished. But it boils down to, certainly your daily activities, your networking, staying in tune with what's going on with the news and trying to figure out like, hey, with the adjustment that's going to naturally occur within the economy, maybe there's more businesses that unfortunately go under or whatever it may be. There may be some other opportunities for market capture within that. So, trying to be strategic about, hey, what areas might there be an opportunity to capture some things kind of down the line or reposition ourselves. I think it just boils down to that daily activity and being committed to it. Having the mindset, though, if you talk yourself out of that activity, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. Okay. Brandon?
A couple of acronyms come to mind, so I'll throw them at you. Salespeople love acronyms almost as much as marketing folks, right? Marketing and sales dovetail. So VAFU, value add follow-up. I don't think now is an awesome time, nor perhaps is there ever an awesome time for the, hey, just checking in. How's it going? It's not going super awesome for a lot of businesses right now. It's just and it's not going to help you qualify your pipeline. The value-added follow-up. So let's use IT as an example, Kenneth, since you brought it up, right? Checking in with folks, hey, where are you in your thinking about managed IT? That's one thing. But following up to say, hey, by the way, a lot of our clients are doing Microsoft Teams now. Here's how to do a custom background. Mm-hmm. That'll help, right? Especially if you have to go down in the basement because the rest of the family's home to do a call. You don't really want to show off your basement. This is a way to present professionally. Here's some accessories that you might consider wearing. They're going to make you look real sharp at work when you've got that big pitch meeting coming up. That's truly useful to clients. Or, hey, during this time of coronavirus, the last thing anybody needs right now is a hack, because who's going to be there to support you if that happens? So here's a few quick tips for, why don't you go ahead and recycle everyone's password now, have them create a new password. Why don't you circulate these quick top 10 cybersecurity tips? Those are all useful, actionable things that people can do that say, man, I like hearing from Kenneth. He's got useful tips for me during this period that are kind of helping to save my bacon. This is definitely a firm I want to work with going forward. Second acronym is BANT, right? The famous one in sales: budget, authority, need, timing. So for a lot of those clients that were already 50% or plus there in the pipeline, the need is probably still going to be there later. The need's probably there now. Do they have the authority? Hopefully they do, or they're in touch with the person that does have authority. The big question for a lot of companies right now is, does the budget exist? Depending on the industry they're in, depending on how they're doing, the budget may or may not exist. Hopefully it will come back in the future. And that's very closely related to the timing. If they don't have the budget now, it's not the right time. But as soon as they do have a budget, the timing will come back in season, and you'll be there for it. So I think right now, for the sales teams that I've been talking with, a lot of it has to do with kind of pipeline curation or maintenance, right? So it's like, this is where it was before. This was who was at 75%. They're now at 25. Some industries, though, they were at 25 before. Now they're at like 90% because they're in the remote work business. They're in the sanitation business. They're in the grocery business. They're in the delivery business. Those are all scaling right now. So they're going to ripen at different seasons, and it's kind of knowing where the people are in that pipeline and be able to shepherd them through, based literally on where they are. But in the meantime, it's providing those value-added follow-ups, I think, is the key.
Great insight. Andrew?
That's a tough act to follow with somebody like Brandon having
Just
that.
make up some acronyms and you'll be fine.
I was going to make up my stuff.
We can make some live sales acronyms. Let's go.
Yeah, I was going to say, here we go. I think the challenge that I'm seeing in my business and in the business owners that I work with is the sales cycle is certainly going to be alluded more lengthened than normal. What I have found, however, is just an extreme level of gratitude for the calls that we've been making on a pretty regular basis. Just understand that, hey, the timing may not be perfect from an implementation standpoint, but these conversations have never been more relevant than they are right now. And so we're still having a lot of those detailed and in-depth conversations, and understand that, hey, I'm going to follow up every 3 to 4 weeks, understanding that we just don't know when the implementation phase will start. But I'm going to stay relevant to the situation and understand that, from a client perspective, like, we're in this together. And when the timing is right, we'll capture that, whatever it is. And again, I've just found probably more thankfulness and gratitude from others of just saying, hey, I just really appreciate you taking the time to call right now. I'm sure things are just as crazy in your world as they are in mine. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of meaningfulness to those type of conversations right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that you're right. It's tough right now. It's tough to that initial, phone call that you make to someone. You probably got about 30 seconds to relay a message to them that is disarming. Right. And they realize that you're really just calling them to do a well check, as we like to call it around here, and make sure that
you guys probably saw the same headline. I saw a headline yesterday, I think, that said the faculty and staff at University of Tennessee are calling all 29,000 students.
Wow.
To see how it's going, right? Because there's going to be a diversity of needs and wants there, right? Like, hey, this is, this remote login isn't really working, or yeah, I'd love to come to class, but I'm housing insecure right now, or I absolutely need to re-up on my scholarship, or when are classes going to start? There's a lot of questions, right? Yeah. And so doing that, I was like, man, it's great leadership. It's also great execution, right? To divvy up and work through that call list. So that's at a large scale. What I think many businesses are doing now, which is what Andrew described, is some are pivoting their sales teams really into kind of a success role, because maybe the industry they're selling into just isn't buying right now, full stop. And so I've talked with a number of leaders that have said, we've taken our sales team, we're making wellness check calls to check in with all of our customers. Our goal right now is not logo addition, it is saving logos. And in fact, we are up for some retraction in some of our accounts, but we don't want to lose any logos. So they reset their metrics and reset their goals from the top down to say, our goal here is simply no logo churn. We're going to take care of everybody really well right now. And they put the whole team on it, which I think is an interesting strategy.
It is. I grew up on DuckTales, and so I remember Scrooge McDuck always saying, a penny saved is a penny earned. And there's no truer time right now than to use that motto. I had a conversation with a good friend earlier today, and I asked him who his auto insurance provider was, and he told me. And I said, "Are they doing any type of rebate or refund for you right now?" And he said, I think I saw something on Facebook, but I haven't had an opportunity to dig into it. And I was telling him about an email that I received from my auto insurance provider last week, where we are getting a percentage of our monthly premium given back to us. And the reason being is because people just aren't driving right now. I drove last Wednesday, and I will drive again today. And that'll be it for 7 straight days, driving just once a week. That's all I'm doing, trying to limit my exposure. And so we've all kind of mentioned some cool stories that large and sometimes even small businesses are doing right now in order to, number one, still try to generate a profit. Number two, use those as excellent marketing campaigns as they let different groups of individuals know what they're doing. But then number three, to try to create some type of repeat customers and enhance their brand moving forward. So very quickly, have you all seen any, or like to hear any stories, additional ones of large or small companies, things that organizations are doing right now that you think are pretty unique or cool? And it could even be a competitor of yours. Obviously, you don't have to say their name, but just stories that you all have heard that you thought, wow, that's a really, really great way to continue to drive business and also to continue to separate yourself from your competitors. And I'll let you all go as you see fit.
Well, I'll say quickly, first of all, on the marketing side, because you mentioned marketing, and I think there is a revamp of the playbook there in coordination with sales, but I think there's certain things that are kind of table stakes right now. One is a little banner at the top of the website that says something about what you're doing vis-a-vis COVID-19. How you're responding to it, how you have updated your practices, right? Hey, we're still in business. We are practicing distancing among our employees and also with our clients. These are the increased sanitation measures that we're taking around the office. Historically, right, we've been dedicated to overnight shipping. Right now, that simply may not be possible. And so we ask for our customers, forbearance during this time. We're shipping stuff as fast as we can, but we can no longer guarantee that, even though it's been part of our brand promise, for the last 10 years, let's say. So really just going down the list and saying, this is what we're doing to proactively engage. This is what we're doing to serve our customers, full stop. I think this isn't necessarily something I've seen yet, but I think it's an interesting idea, both from a marketing and a sales side, is to say, if you're in sales now, we anticipate that this will end at some point, or we'll get back to work in something that resembles the pre-COVID-19 normalcy. We don't know when that will be. We don't know how long it will take to phase in. But let's say you're in a business that requires people to meet up together. Hey, we're not sure exactly when this is going to bust, but I am starting to put together a waiting list, right? Why not get people lined up in a queue? Hey, I just want to know, how eager are you for this? And I want to be able to put you at the top of my queue so that when all this stuff breaks, you're going to be the first stop I make, right? I'm going to go and take care of your business first because you're at the top of my queue. I think that's interesting. Wait lists have always been a successful way to identify, who's the most interested and who wants the product or the service first. Doing that from a marketing side and or from an individual salesperson side, I think can be effective. Or, hey, let's fill up the calendar from 2 months from now. And look, if it goes longer than that, then you just kick those meetings again for an extra month, right? Everyone's going to 100% understand that. But I think setting meetings out a little bit further it is not a bad thing. The worst thing that can happen is you got to reschedule all those meetings again. No big deal. We do that as salespeople all the time anyway. And the great thing about it is it displays confidence. Hey, we're still going to be here a month from now, so let's go ahead and set the meeting. And also it gives the person on the other side some hope too. They get to see the light at the end of the tunnel with you, as far as like, oh, good, well, we got a meeting in the books in a month, so I guess everything's going to be okay one way or another a month from now. And I think that puts some good vibes out. So those are a couple little ideas on the marketing side.
Yeah, psychologically, that's very important. And I don't want to interrupt Andrew or Joe if you had something to say, but one thing that I talked about yesterday with the executive director of the Big Brothers Big Sisters chapter here in Knoxville is they are sharing some of the cool things that their business partners, that their volunteers, that their community supporters, organizational donors are doing. And so he said, hey, if you all have anything cool that you are doing right now, please feel free to share that information with us. And we'll then in turn share that with our email distribution list with our business partners. And so we've shared our YouTube link that has all of these videos uploaded so that they can then pass that information along to their base, which I think is a great way for us to promote what we're doing, who we are, how we're staying active and engaged in the community without necessarily us saying, hey, look at what we're doing. So if you have an opportunity out there, sales professionals, business leaders, to share with your customers, your prospects, your partners, your vendors, to share what they're doing, that could be a great way to stay engaged with your customer and prospect base in order to make sure that as we come through this, that you are top of mind, and as they need new services, enhanced services, upgraded services, that you are the first person that they call to get those. Joe and Andrew, anything that you all had to share?
Yeah, I can't delve into the specific details as of yet, but we're doing something internally that I'm really excited about to really, it's more of to just help people out through this time. And I think trying to figure out just ways for us to impact society right now and helping communicate and alleviate some of these pains and challenges that people are dealing with, and being as empathetic as possible is really, really important. So, we haven't gone live yet, but we got something big, and I hope to share it either on something like this or another platform that you guys will pass along as well.
Sounds like in a couple of weeks we're gonna have to get back and do this again so we can hear Joe's big announcement.
We're pretty excited about it. So let's see. Let's get it launched before we go down that route.
Awesome. Well, just as we wrap up, number one, I want to thank you all for your time, but want to just any last parting words that you all have for sales professionals, for business leaders out there. And it doesn't have to be anything specific in terms of you should be doing this. It could just be just a positive message that you all want to end this group discussion on.
Hey, can I lead off on this one?
Absolutely.
So
you already are.
So we obviously have been talking about our responsibilities in driving business and our outside communication, especially sales leaders with the personality types that we have. We have an internal responsibility as well to help support our people internally and culture within the organization, and reassuring that, hey, we're giving our maximum effort and help support some of those internal challenges that people may be having, whether it's anxiety from the situation, just from potential health issues, whether it's childcare, whatever it may be. We have an internal responsibility to our organization to be as supportive as possible. So I think that's something that we need to remind ourselves of right now, that we can positively impact people internally as well. And that will help in turn, especially the services that we provide our customers.
Andrew?
Yeah, I think, what we've been trying to really spend a lot of time on, from an internal perspective, is just trying to get people to dive into just education. We always make excuses for we don't have the time, and probably now more than ever is a great opportunity for us to be investing in ourselves and our business and our craft, and just ensuring that we're able to deliver the amount of service that's necessary, in our business.
Awesome. And Brandon, finish with you.
I'll say I can't think of a better time for generosity. Sales has always been characterized by generosity, right? There's a give-get theory of sales, but stepping away from that kind of transactional nature, the more generous you are, typically the more generosity that comes back, but without any expectation of return. This is a great time to put out generosity in the world, generosity with the knowledge that you have of your industry, generosity financially for the organizations that are on the front line, doing the work, whether it's, feeding kids that are in school, helping those that are most in need, helping folks that are displaced by this find new jobs, bridge to the next opportunity. I had a friend here in town that was able to use business connections and logistics to procure a lot of protective masks and then route those to medical personnel as well as to the frontline nonprofits that are doing work in the community. What a great use of their business acumen and their ability to source things, right? So for salespeople to be able to use their talents and also to be able to leverage the power of their businesses, right? Businesses are pretty good at procuring things, of being innovative, to creating websites, updating apps, whatever the case may be. Doing that work now, I think, is incredibly important, and those acts of generosity will resonate in the community. Folks will recognize it and they'll appreciate it. And I think that now and going forward, that will also bode very well for individual careers as well as for business brands and the businesses that are committed to the long term where they're located.
Well, gentlemen, thank you all so very much again. We all really appreciate your time. Always great to catch up with you guys, and we wish you the very, very best. And I look forward to, I'll probably kiss each of you on the cheek when I see you. I don't know when it'll be, but we'll definitely get together, and I'll be happy to see you guys in person. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. You all enjoy the rest of this.
Best of luck, everybody.
Thank you, y'all.